Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 15 of A Yank on the Footy. I'm Craig Wessels from Sandusky, Ohio, and I'm glad that you're listening. I do hope that you'll consider sharing my podcast with your friends. You can find it at any of your favorite podcast hosting sites. Starting out here, folks, all I can say is, wow, what a week. Did you see that footy action? Me neither. To say that this first week without footy has been surreal, I think would be an understatement. I'm sure that I'm not alone when I went ahead and last Monday morning hopped up and checked out my schedule magnet that I got from my team membership to see who the Cats were playing this week and realized, oh, that's not happening. It was Gold Coast, by the way, and after watching their performance in the first round of the Marsh series, maybe it's not such a bad thing they're not playing the Suns right now. But the coronavirus has officially put the 2020 footy season, along with all other sports around the country, on hold. Well, almost all other sports. Okay? If you happen to be a soccer fan in Belarus, you're still gold. Okay, they're still playing the last I checked. Belarus has pretty much said, the heck with it, we're playing some soccer. Now, rumor has it that the head of that soccer league in Belarus has decided that under no circumstances would the Belarusian league shut down. They said even if it means that we do nothing more than throw a keeper out there and bring individual players out onto the field and kick penalty kicks, they're going to keep playing. Okay, I made that part up. They're probably not going to do that, and who knows, by the time I get done recording this, they may have in fact decided to shut down. But it has been bizarre knowing that there's not any footy this weekend, knowing that there's not any footy next weekend. Now, I will give the TV networks a lot of credit, and I've not had a chance yet to watch some of the games, but they have been putting a lot of classic games, if you will, on television. I know on the Watch AFL app that I have, there have been many, many games that have shown up that have been listed as the part of the shows because they've taken down the actual schedule from the app because we don't know who's playing when or where they're going to be playing. So they've removed that other than round one. But it's been interesting. And I think while they're doing that, and this goes back to a previous episode from a week or two ago, talking about how, well, I guess it was probably the most recent one where we were talking about how excited Americans became about the game. This would be a great opportunity for the AFL to provide some great games of the past here in the U.S. and put them on free television here. Show some grand final games. Show the MCG with 98,000 people in the stands getting ready to celebrate a West Coast or a Hawthorn or a Geelong victory. Don't show them Meatloaf's performance. And again, I've never seen footage of it, but I hear people joking about it all the time, so it had to be terrible. And I like Meatloaf, both the musician and, well, Meatloaf itself as well. But this has been a crazy week. We're looking at one another trying to figure out, well, what can we, how can we occupy our time? Many of us are now working from home. I teach school. I've been meeting online with my students, working on assignments that way, trying to engage them. Have had a difficult time with some, getting in touch with them. But most of the kids have gotten on board with what we have to be doing online. So in that case, I'm pretty happy with them. But during the downtime, this was an episode I had planned on having out a couple of days ago, but I have just had a real difficult time sitting down to kind of focus on how I wanted to map out this episode. I had ideas of what I wanted to say, but I was in many ways, I guess you could say, I was kind of footy depressed, if you will. The game wasn't there. There weren't going to be games to talk about. There weren't going to be great goals to talk about. We weren't going to be able to talk about, how many Brownlow votes Nat Fife had already picked up. We weren't going to talk about, how many goals Ben Brown was going to kick in a game. None of those things were available to us. So we're devoid of that. And it's kind of sad. And we're trying to figure out, how do we occupy our time? Because we had planned on setting aside, for me, Friday mornings, Saturday mornings, that type of thing, some late Sunday night or Saturday nights to watch footy. And I'm still trying to figure out, what am I going to do to occupy my time? I watched a couple television shows, but even that is getting boring. I have a significant DVD and Blu-ray collection, a very significant one. I'm not even excited about watching any of those right now because I'd rather be watching footy. Now, I haven't jumped in to watch some of the old games yet because, again, I've only been following the game really since 2015, 16, really. Really closely in 16, more closely, I should say. And I don't have that background. And I guess it's going to be a good idea for me to go back and actually look at some of these old games to see some of the names that are the names of lore, if you will, that are talked about in years gone by. To go see Jonathan Brown play for Brisbane, to go see Jimmy Bartell, things of that nature, to get an idea of just who these people were and what their game was like. Okay, so I'm going to do that. I just haven't gotten around it yet because I'm still a little maudlin, if you will. I'm a little bummed out by the fact that there's no actual footy going on. Now, this week has been full of news. Okay, there are all kinds of stories that are happening. I get a news feed every day that shows up through Google, where you can set it up where it will go and find articles that deal with a specific topic. Okay, so every day I get an email from Google with a dozen or so articles about the AFL, the AFLW, Australian rules football, Geelong as well. I even have one sign up for a couple of other things that are extraneous to that show up in my email every day as well. And so I've been perusing and reading through these articles to see exactly what's going on, because I'm a little outside of the bubble on this, being, on the other side of the planet. But the year is passing us by, and the game is not here with us right now. So I'm trying to find out what's going on, what the plans are, what they're hoping to get accomplished as the season goes forward, and if it goes forward, and what's the season going to look like later on in 2020 if it restarts, or are we going to end up simply finding ourselves scrapping the 2020 season and moving on to 2021? Now, I hope that's not the case. I truly hope that's not the case, but who knows what's going to happen? Okay, we can't project what's going to be occurring with regards to that sort of thing. Now, one of the first big issues of this week was the pay cut that the players chose to take. Okay, the AFL Players Association decided to and voted for taking a 50% pay cut for the season. Now, I don't know if that is retroactive or if some of that comes back once the season starts. But, this was through no fault of their own. Okay, I mean, this is, I'm assuming here that, if a player has a contract with a club and they get injured, let's say, for example, Tom Mitchell last year was injured at the start of the season. He still got paid his contract throughout that season because the injury was not something that he did. This virus is not something that the players themselves did, but the problem here is that there's no income coming in from ticket sales. There's no income coming in from the sales of food at the stadium, alcohol at the stadium, which if the MCG and Optus Stadium and Marvel Stadium or anything like the stadiums in the NFL and Major League Baseball, they're selling an awful lot of carbonated fermented beverages. Okay, I seem to recall one of the, was it the Carlton beer company that says that their ad that goes around the inside of the stadium, that I think it was last year or the year before, where it said that every 46 seconds a keg is tapped. So the players took a 50% pay cut. I think that's going to help, and obviously help the league become viable or stay viable. That's an admirable decision on their part. Now, it sounded as though that the players were not real thrilled on this, and they wanted to try to avoid doing this if at all possible. Okay, the AFL administration has taken a 20% pay cut currently as well. They've laid off a bunch of employees from what it sounds like. I watched or listened to an interview with Gil McLaughlin recently, and he said there's nobody left working at the AFL headquarters. Everybody's working from home, or people have been sent home for the duration. Coaching staffs have also decided to take a 20% pay cut. Okay, and that's admirable. I think Chris Scott announced recently that he's going to just give up his entire salary. Was doing a 100% cut. Now, again, I don't know if that starts back up once the season begins. I would assume that it would. I don't know that for a fact, but I would assume that once the season starts, he's going to go ahead and pick up his salary again at that point. Okay, and I'm not real familiar with how the salary structure works for coaches. I addressed this a little bit with regards to the player's salary cap back in episode 10. But I'm not exactly sure how the structure works for the coaches. But I think there is some sort of a cap for the coaches as well. You can't just go and hire the best of, every single coach, that you want and pay them top dollar. You have to have some people who are making a little bit less money to fit them all under the cap. But one of the things that's come out about this is that people have, and I saw a photograph that showed up on one of the websites, one of the articles that showed, I don't remember which team it was. I think it was Melbourne or it was Essendon. I believe there was some red in the jersey. And it showed the coaches booth, and there were 14 or 15 coaches or technicians that were sitting up in the coaches booth, all with their laptops in front of them, doing something related to the game. And, there's even been some scuttlebutt, I'm sorry, that's a Navy term, some discussion, some speculation about whether or not teams or the league should actually reduce the maximum size of each team's coaching staff. Should they set a limit on how many coaches a team can have? Now, I don't know if that's necessarily going to be something that's going to improve the product on the field. Is the game going to get better with fewer coaches? I don't know. You might see, in that regard, players who have much more innate ability on their own, that they just have it, that they're able to do things that can't be coached. Eddie Betts' ability to kick goals from way deep in the pocket, Dustin Martin's ability to get around people and distribute the ball and kick goals that otherwise would not seem to be able to be kicked. Brody Grundy's ability to go ahead and move the ball around on the ball ups to get it where he wants it to go. Those are things, sure, you can, body placement, that sort of thing can be coached, but simply the fact that you have that gift to do those kinds of things, you would probably still be able to do that and maybe even be better at it if some of those other folks didn't have the coaching that would help to get them to your level. That God-given gift, if you will. Okay. But there have been a lot of discussions about possibly reducing the number of coaches to help cut costs. And I did read an article where it was referencing an interview that Ked Hinckley from Port did with Gerald Waitley, and was talking about he was concerned about cutting back or reducing the size of the coaching staffs. That he was concerned that was going to impact a team's ability to prepare, to be effective. So again, I don't know in the long run if this benefits the sport by cutting back on the number of coaches. Okay, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that. So reach out and shoot me an email or leave me a comment on the Podbean app about this, because I would really like to know what you think on this, because I don't know if there's a set maximum. I guess you could is it at a point where you can put as many butts in the chairs in the coach's box until you run out of chairs? Is that how it works? I know there are coaches that are down on the field as well, and some folks even like Chris Fagan actually will coach from down on the field while he has some of his assistants up in the box. But is this a time for teams to trim the fat, if you will, to try to save money? Okay, and along with this, and this is kind of another tangent off of this. David King wrote and talked about this week where he said that this was a great opportunity, a prime opportunity for the AFL to actually open up the game. And I guess his big concern is the fact that there are so many low-scoring games now. Is it boring people? This is one of the things that I have as to why I'm not a soccer or a football fan, if you will, an international football fan. I don't think there's, I like the pageantry of it. I like the geometry of it in terms of moving the ball around, but there's not a lot of scoring. Okay, there's a lot of great defense, whether that be the actual defenders or the keeper. But he talked about trying to open up the game and trying to seize it from the defensive-minded coaches that are there. Okay, he was arguing, like I said, that scoring was down, and he thought that the game might be more exciting this way, allowing for more scoring. Be careful what you wish for, okay? As a 50-year fan of the NFL, I'm not sure that this is such a great idea. Okay, the NFL has bent over backwards in recent years to try to increase scoring, to get more points on the scoreboard. Defense, in many cases, is a bit of an afterthought. All right? If you watch football casually, okay, nowadays, once a wide receiver, once a pass catcher gets beyond 5 yards from the line of scrimmage when they're going downfield to have a pass thrown to them, possibly. Once they get 5 yards down the field, a defender is not allowed to touch them. Not that they're not allowed to bump into them, that sort of thing. They're not allowed to put their hand on them. Now, when the ball's in the air and the defender and the receiver are going up and trying to both catch the ball, there may be a little bit of body contact, that sort of thing. That sort of thing happens. But any sort of thing that's going to disrupt the pattern or the direction that receiver is going is now a penalty. It's an illegal contact penalty. It's a 5-yard penalty. I believe it's an automatic first down. It has really hamstrung the defense. It has really limited the defense's ability to slow down the offense. We're turning it more into a, if you think about it as a military type thing, we're turning it more into an artillery barrage as opposed to an actual infantry battle between the two sides, where the two sides are going face to face. You've got, you're not actually coming in contact with the other side. Okay. So be careful what you wish for as far as the whole idea of trying to open up the game. Yeah. I appreciate Mr. King's comments, and he knows a hell of a lot more about the game than I do. I don't know anything. Okay. But I would just be very concerned if they try to open up the game defensively. What the heck are they going to try to do here? What are they going to try to do to limit scoring? Are they going to go ahead and they're going to carry the 6-6-6 rule to an extreme and only allow 6 defenders inside the forward 50? Are they not going to allow tackling inside the arc? Are defenders not going to be allowed to jump? What are they going to do? Are they going to put a limit on the number of, defenders that are down there? If I'm a team that is, let's say my team is, let's say my team is playing for a premiership, and I'm nursing a 5-point lead, and I've got just a couple minutes left in the game. You're going to tell me that I'm not allowed to bring down more people inside the 50-meter arc to try to prevent somebody from the arc, to prevent them from getting a mark and having a chance to kick a winning goal? Just all in the name of trying to have more scoring? It's a pretty slippery slope. So while it's great to see more goals scored, be careful what you wish for, because it could make defenders relatively useless. And that to me is a rather frightening proposition. Some of the other things that came out of this week were speculation that people talking about the possibility or the likelihood that teams may need to merge in order for the league to survive, or they may need to relocate because they can't support X amount of teams in a certain area. Again, I'm new to the game, so I don't have the history that everyone else has. Okay, I know the story of of Fitzroy having having been merged and becoming the Lions. Okay, I understand that. I got a pretty good history of that on that TV show Jack Irish, which I really, really enjoyed. Those three older gentlemen sitting in the bar were always a lot of fun to listen to when they were talking about the Lions. But it's a pretty scary thought to think that, especially if we don't come back and play this year, if the league decides to merge two teams and your team goes away, you never got to say goodbye to your team. And that's a scary proposition. Okay. Now I get the necessity of doing this, possibly. Okay. There's also talk about really trying to get a team established in Tasmania. Now I know, Tasmania is a big island, but the population of the island is not huge, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. Could they support a single team there? I know that, if I'm not mistaken, it's the Hawks and the Roos go play there a few times each year. But beyond that, there aren't any other games there. Is there enough of a fan base for a club to relocate full-time to Tasmania? I don't know the answer to that, so that's why I'm asking. But it sure seems like that. I actually saw a music video that somebody had created about it was time to have a footy team in Tasmania, to have an AFL team in Tasmania. I actually sent messages back and forth to the gentleman that made the video, I think it was on Twitter. I don't remember if it was Twitter or Facebook, but I was in contact with him about it and very passionate about that. So, I would love to hear from you and see what you think about the whole idea of possibly there being a team in Tasmania. Now, I know that a lot of folks would say, first off, that the natural team to go, well, one, somebody might say the Roos because they're already playing there. Okay. But one of the other teams that people always seem to mention is, we'll send Gold Coast there. But if I'm not mistaken, and again, please let me know on this, as difficult a time that Gold Coast has had in becoming relevant, if you will, are they not in a position where the league really wants to see that team be successful in that city to help gain another foothold of footy in Queensland? Is that not what they're trying to do, to be able to go toe-to-toe with rugby, if you will, to make them relevant up in that? And from what I've gathered, I've done some reading. Gold Coast is a big tourist area. It sounds like it's, in many ways, without the Disneyland, it's a little bit like Orlando, that people like to go there on vacation and hang out. I don't know what kind of or maybe more like Las Vegas would be a good example. Although Las Vegas now has a couple of professional teams there with the hockey team. I don't even know what they're called. They've got gold helmets, Knights, I think. That's what they're called, the Vegas Knights, I think. And then you've got the Oakland Raiders are moving there starting this fall, if they play. But it is it's sad if your team goes. Okay, as a fan of the Cleveland Browns, and not all of you are NFL fans. I understand that, but for those of you here in the States who are listening that happen to know a little bit about the NFL, if you're a little bit older, the NFL team, the Cleveland Browns, like I said, that's a team I've supported my entire life. And after the 1995 season, they left Cleveland. They couldn't get a deal done in terms of constructing a new stadium, and they moved to Baltimore, Maryland. So Cleveland had no team for the 96, 97, and 98 seasons. During that time, they reached an agreement with the league to bring a team back. They got to keep the team name. They got to keep the team colors, the history of the team, all of that sort of thing. So the team that left became the Baltimore Ravens. And I hate the Baltimore Ravens, okay? I despise them. I know that Geelong fans are not supposed to like Hawthorne, but I'll tell you what, once this whole virus thing is over, you guys should link arms and, go buy a beer together, because you guys are going to be better buddies than Browns and Ravens fans. I despise the Ravens. I jokingly said to a friend of mine recently that, if ISIS had a football team and they were playing the Ravens, I'd have to think long and hard on who I would support in that game. That's how much I hate the Ravens, because they used to be the team I supported, and that team was snatched out from underneath us. And there was a lot of things that happened with the ownership of the team. There were a lot of things that happened with the local government in Cleveland. The ball got dropped theoretically, okay, in terms of being able to keep the Browns in Cleveland, because they had built a new baseball stadium for the Cleveland Indians. They had constructed a new basketball arena for the Cleveland Cavaliers, which both opened in 1994, I believe. Yeah, they opened in 1994. So the next year, the Browns and the Indians had shared a stadium, and the Browns were playing in a stadium that was right on the lake and was about 70 years old. It was rather run down, and it did not have the big luxury boxes and that sort of thing that make a team a lot of money. And they wanted a new stadium, and the city wasn't going to pony up the money for that, okay, because here they end up being, in many cases, end up having to be paid for by taxpayers, okay. So, we're at a point in time where we may be seeing talks about teams merging, possibly going to, 16 teams in the league, possibly merging 4 teams. Who would you merge together? Who are your sacred cows? Who would you not allow to merge? Or if you went to 16 teams and you merged 2, that got you to 17. If you had to get rid of another team because maybe they're not economically viable. I know the answer is going to be Gold Coast, but like I said, I really think they want Gold Coast to be as successful as they possibly can be there. And this time I think they're finally getting it right. Hopefully, as long as we can get them back out on the field, okay? But who do you think should be the teams to merge? Shoot me an email at yankonthefooty@gmail.com, or hit me up at yank_on Twitter, or you can leave me a comment on the Podbean app for my podcast as well. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this. While we're talking about all of this stuff about possible relocations and that sort of thing, I needed to give a big shout out to zerohanger.com with regards to this issue, because you got me. Okay, you got me. You caught me. Maybe some of you have run into this today, but I went into it completely forgetting what was going on today, and they got me. So if you go look at zerohanger.com, you might find something related to relocation. Now, it does sound like the AFLPA and the league are trying to figure out some way to get the 2020 season done, no matter how long it takes. Okay. Now, I watched what the weather is like in Australia now, because I'm interested in what happens there. Now, footy is not played during the summer months generally. And from everything that I had seen, you had some extraordinarily warm temperatures this past summer, which of course led to the tragic fires that were going on. But it sure sounds like the players and the league are very open to the idea of playing right through your springtime and possibly into early summer if need be, in order to complete the season. Now, they've resigned themselves to 17 games. Maybe this virus gets wrapped up a lot sooner than we realize, and then it's not necessary to play that late into the season. But maybe this gets stretched out a little while longer, and we end up having to actually push into October into the regular season on the fixture, into November, and ultimately be playing games in December. Okay. Now I did see a report today that Gil McLaughlin said that if we have to play in December, we'll do that. But he said they were certainly going to avoid Boxing Day as far as a day for the finals, because that butts right up against the cricket season. Now, again, at this point in time, we don't know what would happen as far as the finals, where it would be played, because the finals carry on into cricket season. You're not going to be able to play the finals likely at the MCG. So you might end up seeing the finals played at Marvel Stadium this year, possibly, which would be interesting. And if you ended up playing when it's really, really hot out, you could definitely close up the roof. And I'm assuming that Marvel Stadium has air conditioning, so if need be, you could cool off the inside of the arena well enough to make it a comfortable place to play the game. I did see where Lee Matthews, amongst others, was even tossing out the idea of playing a 3-game series for the grand finals. Here in the States, the NBA, Major League Baseball will play a series, if you will. The finals will be a 7-game series. So the best out of 7. So the first team to win 4 would end up winning that title. And I actually referenced one of those, it's not really important, but I referenced one of those series, the 1960 World Series, if you follow baseball at all here in the States. We have this, I'm going to get a little political here for a moment. Here in the States, when we go about electing our president, it's not done by a national popular vote. Some people would like that to be the case. But we have what's called the Electoral College. So during a presidential election, we actually have 51 different elections going on. And each one of those elections, with the exception of 2 states, the states of Nebraska and the states of Maine, if you win the popular vote in that state, you get all of that state's electoral votes. Each I'm going way deeper into this than I thought I would. And believe me, there's a point, because I actually do reference the World Series on this. But the states, for example, if I won a state by, let's say there were 10 million votes in a state, and I got 5 million votes, the next person got 4,999,999, and then somebody voted for, I don't know, Shaquille O'Neal on one of the ballots. If I got the 5 million votes, I won that state. Okay? It's like winning a game in the NBA series. Okay? It's like winning a game in the World Series. So you're trying to get to this majority of what are called electoral votes. All right? And there's 538 of them out there, and you need to win 270 in order to win the presidency. So the way it works out, it's very similar to baseball. And I use, for example, if you're a baseball fan, the 1960 World Series between the Pittsburgh Pirates and the New York Yankees. If you look at that one on Wikipedia, for example, it's amazing because in that series, the Yankees outscored the Pirates. I believe it was 55-27, if I'm not mistaken. The Yankees scored 55 runs and the Pirates scored 27. It might be 54-27 or right around there. It was almost a 2-1 margin. But the Pirates won the series because they won 4 games. They won 4 very close games and lost 3 blowouts. So that's kind of what Lee Matthews is talking about with regards to a 3-game series in the grand finals. Now, I'm not sure if he's talking about it being something where it's 3 separate games, so if I win 2 out of 3, I win? Or was he talking about it being possibly a cumulative score? So if I won the first game 100 to 90, then the next game I'm already going in by a lead of 10 points. I'm not sure what his intent was. I would imagine it would be each individual game, and if I win 2, then I win. I have a feeling that's what he was talking about, but I don't know that to be the case. And I went back and did a little digging, And I noticed that and there were a couple from years ago, but the most recent instance where there were multiple games played in a grand final was 2010 with Collingwood and St. Kilda, where the first game was a draw, and then they played an additional game a week later. So I'm not sure I don't know what your thoughts are on playing a series. If it helps to maximize revenue, to make the game more economically viable, then I guess I'm all for it. But in terms of the purity, if you will, of the season, I'm not sure I'm a big fan of that necessarily. But again, it's not my call by any stretch of the imagination. And I did read this week that the AFL was able to get a line of credit from a couple different banks to help keep the league viable until the season gets going again. So that's a great thing. It's nice knowing that they're going to be able to have the economic ability to push the game into the later part of the year without the revenue coming in from the games that were supposed to be getting played. And who knows if the games start back up again? Who knows if they're going to let the fans back in or not? They may be playing the rest of the season in empty stadiums for all we know. And again, I have not heard anything about that at all, but that almost makes sense that they would do that just out of a precautionary standpoint to not trigger the possibility of another outbreak, if you will. So I don't know if that's going to be the case, but it wouldn't surprise me if there's not a single fan at any of the games this year. And that's a little depressing. Now, I've rambled on a little bit here tonight, touching on a lot of different subjects. One last thing before I wanted to wrap up tonight. I wanted to close out today's episode with one thing. I wanted to wish Mason Cox congratulations on getting approved to become an Australian citizen. I think that's fantastic. You sir, you've totally and completely embraced your new home, your culture. It's impressive. I wish you the best going forward. I did read where you weren't sure when you were going to be able to be sworn in because you didn't know if you could do it from the comfort of your own home. Who knows? Maybe they can have an immigration judge show up at your house in a hazmat suit in order to get you sworn in. But congratulations on that. It's a little depressing as an American, though. To me, this is crushing news because of what just came out today when the International Olympic Committee announced today that footy was going to be an exhibition sport at the 2024 Olympics in Paris. And now we're going to have to, look for another key forward for the U.S. team. Okay, April Fools on that one. I made that up. Unfortunately, they're not going to have footy at the Paris Olympics. Don't get too mad at me about that, but I thought we could use a little bit of levity today. But again, Mason Cox, congratulations on becoming a citizen here in the very near future. That's fantastic. I did see somebody commented that you weren't allowed to use the word y'all, which Mr. Cox, you're probably not listening, but maybe somebody will be listening to this and they'll pass it along to you. You went to Oklahoma State, but I believe you're from Texas. And my son was a Navy ROTC student, and he, when he got his scholarship, was looking at schools that he wanted to attend. So he flew down to visit Texas A&M. And he came back and said, I love the school. Looks great. I'd love to go there, but I cannot. I said, well, why not? He said, because everybody says howdy down there. And he said, and I hate, Dad, when you say it, because if you know me, I'm born and raised in Ohio. 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 miles away from College Station, Texas, and I say howdy all the time. So, again, Mason Cox, congratulations. Best of luck this season when we get it going, okay? Now, ladies and gents, as we're moving into this period where there's not likely to be a whole lot of news other than speculation about when they're going to be playing, how much they're going to be playing, who's playing whom, what the finals are going to look like. So I guess that is news, but there's not actual footy news. One of the things that I would like to do with this podcast is to talk to as many supporters as I possibly can, okay? And that may mean, sitting down and talking to 2 or 3 people a week and setting up interviews and putting them out there to help to allow you to tell your story. Okay. I would love, because again, one of the goals of this is for me to learn the game. I'm trying to learn the history of the game. I'm trying to learn some of the nuances of the game, things that I don't know about it. And I would love to hear from you about your experience as a supporter, your greatest memories, your biggest heartbreaks, even the funniest things or the saddest things that you've encountered as a fan. I would love to hear from you. And if you're somebody who thinks you'd love to be a guest on here, by all means, shoot me an email at ayankonthefooty@gmail.com, or reach out to me on Twitter at yank_on, or on Instagram or on Facebook at a yank on the footy. I check those all fairly consistently. You certainly can, you can certainly reach out. I'd love to talk to you. I have a number of people who I've expressed interest in interviewing, ones that I have loosely lined up. I haven't conducted the interviews yet. And one of the things that I do that I'm not sure how many other interviewers tend to do this with, though, is that I will set up a Google Doc. I'll set up a document that I share with the interviewee's email address to allow them to see some of the questions that I'm going to be asking, to allow them to actually put questions on there that they would like to have asked, to allow them to put their story out there, because this is not a news program where I'm trying to ask gotcha questions, or I'm not holding politicians' feet to the fire or anything of that nature. Just wanted to talk to people about the game of footy. So I want to make it as comfortable as I possibly can for people. So if you listen to, Chris Hickey's interview, or Frode Jernhard, or you listen to any of the other ones that I've done recently, okay, there's been about a half dozen people that I've interviewed. I've shared that document with those folks so they can see the types of questions that I'm going to be asking, okay? And ladies and gentlemen, I cannot tell you how fortunate I feel with the fact that you're tuning into the show, okay? I know this is not a professional podcast, okay? I'm using a relatively inexpensive microphone. I'm recording it sitting at my desk on my laptop. Okay, I'm not in a fancy studio by any stretch of the imagination. And those of you that are, if you're listening, fantastic. I'm doing this on more of a shoestring budget, okay? But the fact that you're listening is extraordinarily humbling. I hope that if you're enjoying it, if you'd consider sharing it with a friend. Tell them about it. You could even just give them the name of the show, and then they can find the show on their favorite search engine. It's found on Spotify, on Google, on Apple Podcasts. It's on probably a dozen different sites, okay? So I would appreciate it if you'd consider sharing it with your friends, telling them about it, reaching out to me and talking to me, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and wrap up now, okay? Ladies and gents, I appreciate you listening again. And don't forget that, while you can find all of the episodes of my podcast at ayankonthefooty.podbean.com, you can also find it, like I said, on your favorite podcast provider. I'm hoping you'll consider giving me a review. I've had a handful of people who have reached out and given me reviews on Apple. I appreciate it. I've had a number of comments on the Podbean app. I do read all of those. I see those every day. If there are new ones, it lets me know. And I try to respond to all of them because I love talking to you about the game. Okay? I'd love to know what you think. What other topics would you like me to address and talk about? I know there are some podcasts. I know there's a footy podcast out there that does nothing but look at an individual season and talk about everything that went on during that season. Okay, and that I have not listened to that one yet, but it surely looks like it would be an interesting one. So I would love to get some feedback from you and hear what it is that you would like me to address in an upcoming episode. Okay, and again, you can reach me via email at ayankonthefooty@gmail.com, also on Twitter at yank_on, and then on Facebook and Instagram at ayankonthefooty. And before I wrap up, I'd like to thank Mr. Joseph McDade for the use of two of his great pieces of music. Mr. McDade has created some fantastic music, and I'm using a couple pieces, Winter's Mist and Elevation. You can find him at josephmcdade.com/music. Mr. McDade, thanks again for your hard work and your wonderful tunes. And ladies and gentlemen, again, I want to thank you. Because while many of us are fans of our teams, deep down we're fans of the game that we love, and that's the game of footy. And we are at a strange point in the recent history of mankind, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that you and your family stay safe. I hope that you're able to take the proper measures to help protect yourself against this virus. Be tolerant of one another. Look out for one another. Talk to your parents. If you're not able to be face-to-face with them, get on Skype. Get on a Google Hangout, talk to them, get on the phone with them, be kind to one another, be tolerant of one another. I think by now we've all got enough toilet paper to last us for a while. They'll start replenishing the shelves. Everything's going to be okay. And as I'd mentioned before, if the media in Australia is anything like the media here in the U.S., I'd tune them out. I'd listen to the experts. Okay? The scientific experts, the medical experts. I'm pretty darn impressed with the governor here in my state of Ohio. He's done a fantastic job. And the director of health in our state has done a fantastic job as well. They want to get this over. They want to flatten that proverbial curve and help us get back to the things that we want to do. And again, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for tuning in. And may your dribble kick never hit the post. I'll catch you later. This has been episode 15 of A Yank on the Footy. Don't forget that you can reach me at yank_on on Twitter or to yankonthefooty@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram or Facebook at A Yank on the Footy. Again, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening, and please consider sharing my podcast with your friends and family.